some of the most successful businesses I've seen yet are where the owner has made themselves replaceable. They've left the building.
Hello and welcome to Scale, Structure, Sell, a podcast for ambitious business owners looking to grow and exit their businesses. I'm Chris Dowling, Investment Manager at Quilter Cheviot, and today I'm joined by Brian Hill, who's a founder at Pathfinders Limited, and who not only has sold his own business, but now acts on behalf of business owners to help them find a buyer and an exit on their terms. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
In every episode, we aim to answer a question that we commonly encounter with our clients. And today's question is, how do I avoid my business sale becoming a nightmare? And I can think of no better man than Brian to help chat us through some of the issues. So, Brian, what is the biggest thing that you learned from selling your own firm?
The biggest thing I learned from my own firm is you don't know what you don't know. So what I mean by that is that as an experienced, almost expert financial planner, some might say, of 15 years, looked after clients for many years, and was seen as being someone who was reliable and trusted, etc. When it came to selling my firm, in hindsight, my confidence exceeded my competence.
What were the biggest shocks that you encountered along the way?
The biggest shocks I encountered along the way, apart from just not understanding the process at all, just thinking it was just a few steps through to heads of terms, completion and the such like. There's a lot more to it. I mean, it's so in depth. You know, we've just written a book on the valuation of financial advice businesses, and it's 60 pages long on valuations, let alone anything else.
If I think about the clients that I've worked with who've been through business sales, they can come from a wide variety of different industries. But if I had to broadly categorise them, it would be between those who've made a sale before and the majority for whom this may be the only time they go through this process. You've been on both sides of that. What have you learned?
The more time someone who's been through the process, the more likely they're not going to DIY. The more likely they're not going to try and do it themselves because they know it's not their subject matter expertise, that they don't have the skills for it, and they don't have the resources, and they almost certainly don't have the time either.
One of the biggest strengths anyone can have is the knowledge to know how far their own skills and experience go and when they need to bring in someone else. What are the areas where business owners typically do need to bring in an advisor?
Well, the phrase I think I would use with this is only do what only you can do. And what I mean by that is unless you have the skills, the capacity, appetite and resource to run a sales process, then outsource it all. Be Captain Slopey Shoulders. You know, delegate ruthlessly. It might seem like it will cost you more, but actually it's an investment well worth making.
One challenge that business owners have is not just that so much of their life is bound up in it, but they can struggle to see their business as an outsider might. And that has a huge effect on the process and ultimately on the evaluation they get.
Well, you can't see your own blind spots. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a coach, a rugby coach, and from the sidelines, he can see what's going on strategically and tactically. Whereas if you're in the middle of a scrum, you have no idea what's going on the wings. And using that analogy, business owners need to be aware that very often they're in the weeds, they're in the scrum, and they can't see their blind spots. And they do need that coach who has been in their seat, in their shoes, if you like, before, and knows what the impact of taking certain decisions is.
If you're selling your business, you have a huge amount of embodied knowledge about how it works, about your clients, about your suppliers. What can really help you explain that value to a broker or to someone who might be your ideal purchaser?
So a really good idea with this is to take some time and explain your business, not just the purpose of the business, who you serve, but how it works, as if you're explaining it to a class of 5-year-olds. Get out the crayons and actually write it down as if you're explaining it to a 5-year-old. And that's a really good start because that's where the broker, particularly if they're not familiar with your profession or industry, that's what they're going to need to start with, if that makes sense.
What makes a business that can be sold as opposed to some clients that can be bought or some machinery that can be bought or some goodwill that can be bought?
Well, I think one of the most important things here, Chris, is a replaceable owner. Irreplaceable owners are, the businesses have a diluted value, if any value at all. And so some of the most successful businesses I've seen yet are where the owner has made themselves replaceable. They've left the building, so to speak. One of my clients, he has his office is completely separate to everybody else's, and he doesn't always know who's joined the company, who's left the company. He's very much divorced from it. And that business has a £25 million enterprise value because he's easily replaceable and he's already got people in doing the heavy lifting that he was doing once upon a time many, many years ago. And that's a good lesson for all of us.
When a potential purchaser looks at a business, they'll want to see room to grow and they'll want to see systems and consistency. That gives them the confidence that it's something that they can really work with and scale. How can business owners help those purchasers see that potential?
So it's all in the preparation, really. Without preparation, then you're just going to have a poor outcome. You'll remember the phrase, proper prior planning preparation prevents a poor performance, outcome, sell, whatever it is. The success in your sell is directly proportional to how much preparation you put into it. And the biggest thing that people can do is get prepared early. And there's a phrase I would use is that the best day to prepare for your exit is the day you start the business. Now, very few people do that, to be fair. So the next best day is today. Even if your exit is 5 months, 5 years, 15 years away, start today. Start working on it today and reverse engineer it so you can see what's ahead and plan the business accordingly.
What can I do today as just my first steps towards a proper exit plan?
Work out what you want. That's got to be number one, is work out what you want, when you want it, have a really good idea of what life needs to look like. And it might be monetary, it might be location. I live in Cyprus at the minute, and that was on purpose and planned quite some time ago. If you plan backwards and you've got a plan in place, there's a better chance of hitting it than not having any plan at all. So reverse engineer it, work out what you need, have a good financial planner there to say, right, to help you with your lifestyle financial planning, your personal cash flow, and work how much do I need net after all taxes to live and to go and do whatever I want to do next. And when's the earliest I can achieve it? If you say I want to achieve it in 10 years, great, but can you do it in 2? Then do it in 2, and then you've got 8 years to relax, if that makes sense.
I think your point about working backwards is a really key one.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference between business owners who are forced to sell and are forced to take the price they're offered, and those who are working back from a number they've come up with that suits them.
Yeah.
Exiting is about the money, but it's not just about the money. One thing that we do with our clients is try and work out what's the minimum they can accept for the lifestyle they need or want, and what might be a decent price and what might be a good price, so that when the inevitable kind of chipping away or negotiation begins, they've got a clear idea of how much ground they need to give or give at all. And what's the emotional journey during the sale process?
There's tears and gnashing of teeth, at different points. There tends to be more, again, in relation to the level of preparation. The way we work is we reverse engineer things. So we do all the hard work, the heavy lifting up front, because then that gives, we know exactly what we're dealing with. Most direct sales, DIY sales, or broker-led sales, they leave it until after heads of terms are reached. And that's where everything slows up, where people then exit process. People are surprised, buyers get surprises, and that's why a lot of deals fall through when people go direct or through brokers. We have a 100% success rate because we do all the heavy lifting up front. So emotionally, we get to deal with it then.
So when the money lands and the business is sold, that must be fantastic. What is it emotionally like in the month, the 6 months, the year after you sell your business? To
be fair, I think it's an anticlimax. Having been through it myself, you kind of feel numb. You've been through this massive process and its completion, lots of ink is dry, and that's it. And there's dust balls going through your lounge. It's a very strange feeling.
So we spoke about the importance of preparation and of seeing your business as a potential purchaser would. What can you do to mitigate some of those risks?
So some of those risks might be the spread of your revenue, for instance. And in a financial advice firm and many other professional services firms, you will have a spread of clients. And one of the biggest risks is having what's called a long tail. A long tail is a lot of lower value small clients that take up as much time and effort often as the bigger clients, but produce little revenue and often are loss leading. They're loss making, if you like. But we seem to, as businesses, want to hold on to these clients, which I do understand, but they do create a huge risk within the sales process.
I think for a purchaser, any form of concentration risk kind of raises a red flag, whether that's dependence on a small number of clients, a small number of suppliers, a small number of IT systems, a small number of employees. Those always jump out and are really prominent, aren't they?
Very much so. And one of the best ways you can address this is doing what we call a pre-mortem. And a pre-mortem is working out what could go wrong, what went wrong. Assume the business is completed and it all goes pear-shaped, what's going to go pear-shaped? And it might be that you've got a concentration risk in your IT suite. It might be a concentration risk in that 20 of your clients hold 80% of the profit in your business and half of them leave. And then reverse engineer that to prevent that happening as best you can.
So coming back to what can I do to avoid my business sale becoming a nightmare? If you had to summarise them just down into 3 points, what would be the three main ones?
So the three main aspects are representation, preparation, and terms, not price.
One of the things we need to get right is representation. Can you chat us through a bit more?
So representation means that you ensure the people who are presenting you represent you. So that means sell-side representation. If you can, don't go direct or DIY. Those are the most expensive deals to do, and they're fraught with issues because you don't know what you don't know. If you go through a broker, you need to understand if they are buy-side or sell-side. Or if you use an advisors, understanding where their focus is, that they are there to represent you.
I think it's fair to say that along with, say, the purchase or sale of a house, the sale of a business is going to be one of the major chapters and the major decisions, in your life. And it really, really pays to do a lot of research and speak to as many people as possible.
Absolutely. And for most business owners, their business sale is not a revolving door. They don't very often they don't do it more than once. And which means that you need to get it right first time. You need a hole in one. So why not give yourself the very best chance of getting that hole in one instead of relying on good luck?
When I speak to business owners, very often they don't have an exit time frame in mind. And even if they do, it's very often orientated around a number. And how that number is derived is sometimes kind of foggy. But one thing that really sticks out about what you've mentioned is it's terms, not price. What does that mean for someone who's a business owner?
As far as terms, not price, that means that you need to look at the deal as a whole. So we don't just look at the multiple, we don't just look at the value, but we look at how long it's paid over. We look at what makes that deferred consideration increase or decrease. We look at what happens to your clients. We look at what happens to your staff. There's 101 aspects that people need to look at that makes the deal work or doesn't work. The worst thing you can do is just say, I've had an offer for the business and think it's done, because it's not.
The two most obvious factors around a business exit that come to mind are the multiple on exit and the type of purchaser. And those can have, a big effect. But it can be slightly unhealthy for owners to focus on them because they're the ones that we have very little control over. The factor that we can control a great deal and we can start controlling that as soon as possible is preparation. Can you talk a bit more about what business owners can be thinking about?
I think that's a great concept because it means that we focus on the things we can control, which is purely having a clean business. So what I mean by that is we have all of our financials up to date and taxes paid and stat accounts filed, all our accounts line up properly with our expectations. We have supplier contracts detailed and all the expectations are there. We know exactly what's going on with the business, but more importantly, we can demonstrate it. And if people are think, could I do this or not? Well, if you had a buyer call you Friday afternoon, 3:00 and say, Chris, love your business, going to pay all cash for it. Very happy. This is exactly what I want. But one caveat, you say, what is it? Say, due diligence starts Monday. Are you ready? And most people their eyes go wide open and go, no, they're not. And so, again, reverse engineer that. Get yourself ready so you're ready for that Monday morning start at due diligence. And your business will run better because of it also.
Some of the value of a business is dependent on big levers, big factors, the macro outlook for the UK, how much dry powder PE has, the success of a given sector. But also, experience tells us that a lot of it is down to much more mundane things, reducing the number of surprises that a potential purchaser is worried about. And that comes down to a lot of the dull stuff, which is in your control. And a lot of that comes out in due diligence. What kind of plumbing and kind of routine things can business owners really get to grips with to help support their sale price?
I think you've touched on a really important part there, which is complexity kills deals. Complexity kills deals. Buyers love, generally speaking, simple, standardized, scalable businesses which have profitable clients that value it. So we don't need to do anything spectacular or clever. And so the plumbing that's involved in that is it simple? Is it scalable? Or is it dependent on people? The more dependent on people it is, the more challenging we're going to have to say that it's a scalable business, particularly if they're not replaceable that we talked about earlier on.
One of the things I drew from your book is the importance of not waiting to be approached and just taking that upon yourself to do preparation and to do research. What kind of research should business owners be doing?
So the phrase I'd use with this, Chris, is knowledge gives you choice. Knowledge gives you options. So starting as early as possible and going as broad and as wide as as deep as you can in this. So obviously, I'd say buy my book. That's for financial advisors. That's going to be a helpful start. But understanding how this works, because you really need to know. There's no revolving door, like we said before, and getting a real in-depth knowledge of what looks good to buyers, what's risky to buyers. What are the metrics? How do they measure? And how do your business measure up? And if we can bring those things together and you get a really good understanding of that, you have choices, you have options.
If you don't know and anticipate your buyer's terms, then you'll be forced to accept them.
You're just going to go down a cul-de-sac. Yeah. You will go down that cul-de-sac of the buyer saying, because don't forget the buyers are professional buyers and they're looking to get the very best deal as close to £1 as they possibly can. They're not your mate and they're not going to pay over and above ever for a business that doesn't bring them exponential returns. So to make sure you don't go down that cul-de-sac, make sure that you have got as much knowledge as you possibly can. Otherwise, you don't know what you don't know.
For a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, there's quite a big disparity between them and their purchaser. They may sell a business once or maybe twice. The acquirer may be looking at 5 at any given time, may have a long list of 20. How do you see that play out in the clients that you've dealt with?
It's a really important point. One of the buyers that we work with, we have a list of 173. They have bought 73 firms, I think it is, over the last 3 years. They're extremely good at it. But one interesting conversation I had recently was from a private equity firm. And they said for every 10 businesses they invest in, 3 flop, 3 don't work. So they've got it right 7 times out of 10. For the seller, they have to get it right 10 times out of 10. They get 1 chance at it. So, whereas the buyer as a professional can get, can get it wrong, they prefer not to. As a seller, you just don't have that luxury.
If I'm a business owner and I'm approached by someone offering to help me sell my business, how do I know who they're working for? Me or a purchaser?
So whoever presents you should represent you. And that means that when you're going to market, when you're selling your business, the person or the firm that takes you to market needs to be on your side.
And how does that play out in practice?
It plays out in practice in that you have what's called sell side and buy side predominantly. So sell side is a firm or an individual who represents the seller. Buy side is a firm or an individual who represents the buyer. But unbeknownst to many sellers, they're actually engaging buy side representation. And it's the buy side representation and sell side, their job is to represent, if you like, a fiduciary duty to those they have a contract with. So that makes no sense, into my mind, to engage with a buy-side representative if you want to sell your firm, because they represent the buyer, not you. Having been through it myself, sold my own business, there's very, very clear conflicts of interest to that process. Now, maybe there's ways of mitigating it. The best way of mitigating it is using sell-side representation.
Brian, you're a former financial planner, and a lot of your business now is representing financial planners. But you've got quite a strong opinion derived from your experience. What is that?
So one of my very strongly held opinions is that we as financial planners, quite rightly, are evangelical about clients taking advice, support and guidance from us as financial planners. But when it comes to selling our businesses, I find a lot of financial planners don't take their own advice. They don't go and seek advice. They DIY. It makes no sense.
Brian, you're not just a professional M&A advisory guy. You're not just a professional ski instructor. There's a man behind there as well. What are your strongest personal opinions?
Well, my strongest personal opinion really is to be more curious. Because what I find is that the person in front of you is not the person you're talking to. They can be very, very different people, different personas at home, at work, with their friends, and that whether it's someone's a financial planner or anything else, be more curious, peel back the layers and listen to people, and you will be amazed at the stories that people have.
I think there are very few fields of life, personal or professional, where that isn't excellent advice. Thanks, Brian. That was a really informative chat. And it's been great to speak to someone who's seen so many transactions, both as a buyer and a seller.
You're welcome, thank you.
But I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today, so it only remains me to say thanks again to Brian and to you, the watchers, and look forward to seeing you again. Thanks.